Thank you all so much for joining us. This event is being put on by Speak Out Socialists. We are honored to have Nora Barrows-Friedman here to present on the situation in Palestine, and we hope to have a very interesting discussion with you all. To first say a few words about Speak Out Socialists. As socialists, we understand that we have a responsibility to actively oppose the horror that we are witnessing in Palestine from within this country that is aiding and abetting this genocide with our own tax dollars. We understand that this is an outcome of the system of capitalism, which necessitates wars of imperialist domination, such as this ongoing US-Israeli war on the people of Palestine. In order to end this genocide and prevent any genocide from occurring again, we need to end capitalism and replace it with socialism, a system that can uphold the rights and the needs of all people and preserve rights of life around the world. This change is only possible through the global united activity of the majority of people. In our work, we participate in the struggles of our time to oppose the attacks on human rights inevitable under capitalism, while putting forward the perspective that we must also keep focus on the entire system in our organizing. One of the things we do as a group is to put on these monthly town hall discussion events where we invite presenters with expertise on current issues to share their knowledge. These presenters may or may not share all our political perspectives, but they are people with whom we can agree on the importance of sharing and discussing these questions, and in this case, the necessity to put an end to this atrocity. We cannot be silent in the face of this genocide. Although the people in power, both Democrats and Republicans, will do and are doing everything they can to force our silence. Demanding the end of the subjugation of the Palestinian people threatens the position of those in power, because this situation reveals the inherently flawed priorities of our current world order, where the lives of an entire nation of people are deemed less important than the property prospects of a richer nation. And people everywhere can watch a genocide unfolding, cry out, and flood the streets in outrage, but their elected leaders remain unmoved and complicit. We have seen this all over the world, with mass mobilizations in the streets, boycotts and dock worker strikes, and multiple international aid flotillas attempting to break through the siege, including the Samud flotilla currently en route. Still, world leaders allow Israel to continue its escalation. We need to build a different society, and that will require an organization for and of the working class, taking a leading role in the struggles ahead. But this organization does not yet exist. It is up to us now and activists around the world to build it. And as we have seen through the Palestine Solidarity movement, people everywhere are waking up to how the world really works and seeing the need to play their part in making systemic change. That is the goal of Speak Out. If you want to be a part of building a better world, we encourage you to reach out after this event through Instagram or email and find out more about the work we do. We are active in the San Francisco Bay Area, in Baltimore, and in the Triangle area of North Carolina. The task ahead of us is immense, and there aren't enough of us now, but we hope you join us in working for the massive change we all know is necessary. I will now introduce our wonderful speaker for today. We are joined by Nora Barrows-Friedman. She's a staff writer and associate editor at the Electronic Intifada and the author of In Our Power, U.S. Students Organized for Justice in Palestine. She also co-hosts the Electronic Intifada YouTube livestream on Thursdays and radio broadcasts Tuesdays on KPFA 94.1 FM, archived on kpfa.org. She's been reporting on Palestine for over 20 years. Thank you so much, Nora, for being here.
I am really honored to be here, and I don't know, it's what are we watching? What is this? It's 2 years almost, plus 78 years of ethnic cleansing and genocide and subjugation and Western colonialism. But the last 2 years has really, I think, turned for a lot of us, especially those who are communists and socialists, has really revealed what we've always known theoretically about how power works and how colonialism works and how imperialism works. And the methods that we know historically of stopping this imperial drive for genocide and mass slaughter of people theft of resources, theft of land, theft of culture. Um, it feels like we're in a time, an unprecedented time. And so we're recording history as it happens now. And I think that task for us is monumental and overwhelming, and it can lead to feelings of despair and panic and survivor's guilt. And I think we can't let those feelings overcome us. We have to double down on our commitments and our political principles when it seems impossible. That's how change happens. As someone who's been covering Palestine for a long time, I mean, I don't have to tell you what's going on in Gaza right now. You're all seeing it. You're seeing the obliteration of everything in Gaza. You're seeing the forced expulsion, the forced displacement of 1 million people from northern Gaza into a concentration camp in the middle that has no infrastructure, no protection, no food, no sewage, no water, and is surrounded by an enemy that is blatantly intent on destroying them openly. The UN just a couple days ago, finally, right, after 2 years, but the UN Commission of Inquiry finally declared it a genocide and called on Israel and member states to do everything in their power to stop Israel and punish those accountable. Great, yes, yes. And there's no enforcement mechanism. That's right, there's member states who are actively accomplices this genocide. I mean, the US, this is not a US sponsored, this is not a US funded genocide. This is an American genocide. Israel has been the tip of the colonial spear in terms of Western empire and American empire at the head. So we are seeing American weapons, American bulldozers, American Israeli pilots. We're seeing them commit the most heinous acts of violence against an indigenous population. And we feel like we can't stop it. It gets worse and worse hour by hour. The stream of, I never knew what the inside of a child's skull looked like until the last 2 years. And now I know, and I can't unknow it. And I'm sure, like all of you, you can't unsee what you've seen. Just a few days ago, a doctor in a hospital in central Gaza filmed himself in shock when a patient, a 2-year-old girl, was brought in with her face blackened with burns and her torso ripped in half and her intestines spilling out onto the hospital bed. And he was unable to save her. And so all he could do was witness her taking her last breath. And when he asked about what her name was, he was told that her entire family had been killed. She was the last one who was taking her breaths. And so there's no one there to identify her. this is what we've done. This is what the US has done. This is what the US has always done to indigenous people, to people of color, to people who dare to stand in the way of ethno-supremacist, colonialist, imperialist goals. And we're watching it happen and we feel like we can't stop it. But one of the ways that the imperial ruling class consolidates its power is when they make us believe that we can't change it, that we are powerless, that we are just our only the only way that we can survive is if we accept it. And we know that's not true. We look at history, we look at the overthrowing of various repressive regimes. I'm thinking about Algeria, I'm thinking about Vietnam, I'm thinking about South Africa. And, up until the point that the regime broke, it felt like it was impossible that this regime was going to be the way it was until it breaks. And then it broke. And so I take a lot of comfort. It pulls me back from the brink when I think about the fighters in Algeria, when I think about the Viet Cong, when I think about the ANC, and when I think about people here who have been organizing and putting their weight on the levers, trying to shift balances of power, trying to materially, physically stop an atrocity. And I mean, just, in the last year, there have been some incredible campaigns that I am in awe of. There's the Mask Off Maersk campaign. How many of you have heard of the Mask Off Maersk? All right. This is a coalition. It's basically organized by the Palestinian youth movement in this country and in Europe and North Africa, where they have said, okay, let's look at the actual physical material way that Israel acquires its weapons. And what about the shipping routes? What about the trade deals? What about, who are the people working at the ports? And so they identified these bottlenecks for Maersk, which is one of the largest transnational shipping companies. It's a Danish company. Been around for 100 years or something. Everything goes through Maersk. It's this massive behemoth of a transnational corporation. And so PYM and in collaboration with, I believe, Forensic Architecture and a bunch of other groups, lots of nerdy researchers, identified, a few main ports that Israeli weapons are transported to, and not just the weapons themselves, not just the physical rifles and the missiles, but parts of the F-35 fighter jets, parts of D9 bulldozers that Israel then uses to militarize these Caterpillar bulldozers. These very kind of, you'd think they're insignificant. A few bolts, a few metal panels, batteries, things that actually don't seem like they're part of the weapons industry, but they are, absolutely. And they identified which shipping routes these parts take. And then slowly over the past year, they've been working and organizing with port workers, right? In the great tradition of organizing port workers to stop unloading and loading these Maersk shipping containers and the cargo. And they have made a significant dent in Maersk's income, the profits. They are making it bad business for this massive company to do business with genocide. That's one campaign. And that's a campaign, I mean, here in the Bay Area, there are many, many ports. And there are workers at those ports who have been organized before and can be organized again and are working to also become a bottleneck. I mean, just 10 years ago, I think, at the Port of Oakland, there's a massive action at the Port of Oakland, actually the second massive Port of Oakland action around Palestine that really forced the port to stop doing business with Israel's Zim shipping line. And now Zim cannot dock at any, I think, Western coastal port. So it started here in Oakland, down to LA, up to Portland, and in Washington. So Zim cannot dock anywhere because the workers have made it like unfeasible for them to do so because of the organizing that happened at the ports. And now the great folks who brought you the Mask Off MERS campaign, PYM and a bunch of other organizations, are leading a campaign here at the Oakland airport because FedEx, the FedEx commercial planes are now also, they've been identified to be carrying parts for weapons and weapons components through the Oakland airport. So that's another bottleneck and a lever that activists and organizers should be paying attention to and organizing with. There are ways to affect this. I mean, it all feel there are 20,000 times a day. I feel like everything we do is futile. Like everything we do doesn't make a difference. There's nothing. How are we as like 50 people in one room, or like me as a person who talks on the internet? What difference does any of this make? But as we know from what we've been taught, we are stronger together. We are effective when we're organized and principled. And there are still material ways to keep people alive in Gaza. If you're not going to the port and doing organizing in person, you can be sending money to mutual aid organizations on the ground in Gaza so that people can be fed and clothed and babies can have diapers. The formula, I mean, the level of barbarity that Israel and the US has waged on the people of Gaza to try and strip them of all dignity and basic necessities. The images that are coming out about people being displaced sometimes for like the 15th time in the last 23 months, with literally the clothes on their back. People need us to show up for them. And there's the Samir project, which I'm always advocating for. Samir, SAMEER. Find them online. They are a Gaza-based mutual aid organization that purchases items in bulk so that it's not as expensive for individuals, and then they distribute. There's the Lifeline for Gaza. I think it's Lifeline, the number 4 Gaza.com, which is a running list of campaigns that have been vetted and verified and all the rest, but like, who fucking cares? Just give people money. Of like individual families who need, $50 so that they can purchase a tarp for their shelter. And these wonderful people behind Lifeline for Gaza have developed an algorithm that pushes campaigns that have been neglected for like 5 or 10 days up to the top. So it's just kind of this rotating list of campaigns that you can support. $5 goes a long way. In principle, Palestinians have always said, we don't want your charity. We have everything we need. We have the land and we know how to work it. They've been there for millennia. They are completely self-sustainable if it wasn't for this monster that descended upon them and is now subjecting them to the most horrific violence the world has ever seen. Palestinians say, we don't want your charity, we want your solidarity. And at times like this, $5 really goes a long way. It can literally mean the difference between life and death for a family in Gaza. So we can do many things at once. We contain multitudes. We can send money. We can organize at the port. We can organize at the airport. We can hold events like this. We can write. We can, I don't know what, I'm I'm like, I'm so jaded these days. Protests, fine. If that's what moves you, organize a protest. At this point, we have to remember that our elected officials, especially here in Berkeley, don't give a shit. There are some. There's the mayor of Richmond, Eduardo Martinez, who's incredible. And he's been doing wonderful work in terms of getting the city of Richmond to divest from any and all bonds that from companies that do business with the Israeli state. Identifying, our allies, our comrades in local politics is always a good idea. Trying to get someone like, I don't know who the current mayor is of Berkeley anymore. I really couldn't give a shit, but I'm sure they're awful. But like Jesse Arreguín before them, completely useless. And we, ambitionists, right? Like now he's a state senator. That's what he always wanted to be after he became mayor. It was never about serving the people of Berkeley or their demands for a better city. It was about accelerating his own, career ambitions. And once he's done with state senator, I know where he'll try to go next, right? We don't need them. We need allies. We need comrades. We need people who will say, this is a genocide and we're not going to fucking pay for it anymore. Sorry, I'm very salty today. I think I'll stop there. It's a really rotten time for all of us, all around the world. Here, there's this I'm astonished at the forced mourning period of this Nazi who, this is, and there's half masts, really, this is where we are. It's not that America has lost its way. It's always been like this. The mask is just off now. It's much more honest. They're really revealing themselves to be who we always knew they were. So anyway, that's me. Thank you. And hang in there. We have to stay strong. Thank you.